I now request Dr. Sarojini to introduce the guest speaker of the day, Dr. Abhishek Srivastava. I welcome you, sir.
Good morning, friends at Nimhans. Thank you, Professor Narayan, for the invitation. Good to see my old friends GK from Nimhans there and Naveen from Jaipur being there. Good to see you after a long time. I have fond memories of Jaipur doing a GATE course a couple of years, 5 years back. So let's start the topic. I'll be speaking on advances in post-stroke motor rehab primarily. So we talk about stroke deficits, neuroplasticity concept, when to mobilize, what approaches to use to mobilize those patients, and what is the evidence. We'll not talk about pharmacotherapy, brain stimulation, and the new technology coming in for that. What does stroke means? For a patient at the end of the road, for family at the beginning of burden, for us physicians it's interventions, for the organization it's investment, and for nation is loss of disability light years, which means people suffer because of stroke. Always remember, no two strokes are alike, and no two stroke patient react similarly to these situations. So if you have same MRI, the outcome can be different. So stroke can cause multiple impairments, cognition, behavior, vision, speech, language, swallow, movement, tone problems, paralysis, sensory issues, and incontinence. So our job in rehab is to identify all these impairments in detail and treat them with our team to prevent a disability to happen. If we don't do proper treatment, we will have disabilities in mobility, in self-care, cognition, communication, and bladder problems. And remember, the main issues are the attitude, not the people functions per se. So some fact sheet, stroke is a major cause of locomotor disability in adults. Only one third of stroke survivors ambulate in the community to be functional, and supervised training in chronic stroke survivors can improve the outcome. We show the evidence for that. And the most potent intervention to improve mobility in stroke patients is task-oriented practice. So you can do something called as repetitive task-specific training. You can make a person walk, he will be able to walk in long term. So whole issue is how to change the brain. Is it possible? It is possible. We'll see how. Some concepts of plasticity have in 1949 first says that some changes in the brain can occur. You can see a cortical map of a primate where you can see a lot of changes in the dorsal prefrontal cortex, which can take over the motor function after a stroke in a primate, which means brain can change. It is our job to make that change in the brain. So again, basic facts. Recoveries of two types. A spontaneous recovery happens in first 3 to 6 months, injury settles down. We can modify this by rehab interventions. Second is functional recovery, which is unlimited. There's no time for functional recovery. It is primarily based on plasticity and training, primarily based on rehab. Same way, rehab is of two types, a compensatory rehab or a remediational rehab, which means if someone can walk, we give him a stick, it is compensation, very well recognized. Second is remediational rehab. Can we restore function by reducing the impairment? Can you improve the motor power? Can you reduce the spasticity? Person can walk better. This is what we can do with help of newer technology and good training concepts. Again, Warren Cohen has shown with a simple cartoon, we can recover motor function by 5 ways. First, we can do something in the injured cortex with medications. Second, we can do RTMS on the opposite motor cortex to reduce the inhibition it offers. We can do RTMS or TDCS for the supplementary motor area. Dr. Narayan does a lot of good work on that. We can do therapy on the injured extremity, on the involved extremity by therapy, robotics, balance systems, gait systems. Last is to constrain the opposite extremity called as CIMT. So whatever we do in rehab comes in these five specific subdomains. And the most critical component is practice task specific training. God has made hand to work, not to exercise. God has made legs to walk, not to exercise. So you can make a person walk and make him use his hands, that will form new circuits in the brain that will get new motor or functional recovery in long term. Again, some more point, very important thing to understand how these systems work. We all know in acute stage, something called as penumbra. Some part of the brain is partially damaged. Neurology colleagues will thrombolize it or remove the clot, A surgeon will remove the whole hematoma from there to reperfuse the brain. We can start some drugs now very, very early, which can help motor as well as language recovery. And what happens in first few months is very, very important. Brain recruit additional areas to perform new function that's called as compensation. Other part of brain takes over function that's called as reorganization. This ability of brain to compensate for lesions is called as neuroplasticity. So whatever we do in rehab is to trigger that plasticity. And we can trigger it by two ways: by intensive training, called as task specific training, also called as experience dependent plasticity, or by newer biological treatments like pharmacological agents, RTMS, and TDCS. Today we'll talk primarily about the intensive training, how it can help to improve locomotor outcome in primarily stroke patients. Especially in language areas, some part of uninjured hemisphere takes over function, especially for language representation. That is called as homologous area adaptation. Doesn't work well for motor concepts of language. The right brain can take over function over a long period of time. So first thing we see a patient in the stroke unit, should you mobilize patient or not? There are nice guidelines available to when to mobilize, not to mobilize, sit out only. So if BP is very high or very low, GC is less than 8, SP 94, heart rate very low or very high, bad neglect, not to mobilize. There are nice guidelines available. If they can toilet sitting at the edge of the bed, proper head control, drowsy, not unconscious, can you wait to sit out, and so on, but guidelines are available. But the most important point is to make them stand as soon as possible. You can do in the ICU also. You can stand and talk for 24 hours. Simple tilt table. We all know that. This is an Erigo system where you have a FES inbuilt in the tilt table, which will prevent postural drops. You can stand even day two without any postural hypertension in your ICUs also. You can make them stand. The most important concept is therapy. Nothing can replace therapy. People will learn skill only in therapy. There are multiple approaches. We all know about that. What we can do beyond conventional therapy, we talk today about that. So remember, if you don't use your hand or legs, it will cause learn non-use. It will cause worsening of the impairment. So we can use multiple approaches now, these 10 approaches, which can improve locomotor outcome in these stroke patients. I think we have got the first two systems, the body weight unweight system and the balance system. But there are multiple others. We talk about these two in detail, others in short. This is a unweighing system called as body weight support system. You can use it over a treadmill or you can use it on the ground. The concept began in 1982. Edgerton et al. Was the first to use this concept in cats, especially in spinal cats. So what they did a D6 level transaction of cord in cats and made them walk in the lab in a treadmill. And what they saw, 50% of cats learn to walk on the ground. Why? Because there's something called as central pattern generator, CPG, in dorsal cord, by which we are able to walk. With intensive training on the cats, they were able to make those cats walk. Then in early 90s, switching spinal cord injury, this thing came into the literature and many studies happened in complete and incomplete spinal cord injury. But the Cochrane review says that in humans with intensive locomotor pattern training, they were unable to generate walking in humans. Then in late 90s, Vicentin did the first trial in stroke patients, where they have shown that if you use an unweighing system, so you can offload the body weight, put a person on a treadmill, and therapists put the step forward and because there's no power, you can generate a walking pattern, especially in stroke patients. That led to a lot of studies in late 90s and 2000s, where they have shown to be used in acute patients and chronic patients. We did a study. This is the guy. This guy is Gary Colombo. His real picture, 1993. He was doing his PhD those days in Austria. And this is a spinal cord patient. You can see a body weight support harness being walked on a treadmill. This guy ultimately developed a robotic system. It's called as Locomat, most common system available right now. The concept started in mid early 90s. We did a study in our Niemann days, this last old study, published in 2015, where we have used same concept, body weight training, to improve gait in chronic stroke survivors. Those patients who were suffered until a stroke, more than 3 months duration, who were trained 20 sessions, 5 days a week for 4 weeks. What we wanted to know is that does this gait training with without body weight support improve gait in these chronic stroke patients? And second, does this effect last over the 3 months or not? So this group had study had three groups. Group one only had patients who got conventional physical therapy. Group two had patients who were on the treadmill with a body weight support system, but no body weight was offloaded. It was a sham group. And third was a group where they were walking on a treadmill with an weighing system with the body weight support offloading. So what we saw, this is a study details concept diagram, altered to about 45 patients. And you can see the three groups, 1, 2, and 3, conventional training group, treadmill training group, body training group. You can see the parameters, age, gender, all were properly matched. And then this is the results of group 1. We took 4 basic parameters, continuous stroke scale, a functional ambulation category, walking speed, and walking endurance. And you can see at the end of training, significant improvement at 3 months follow-up. Improvement. This is patient trained by conventional approaches, no machine being used. Then you see group 2 who are trained on the machine, only with treadmill training, no body support provided. Again, you can see scores all 4 parameters, significant p-values. Even at follow-up, they're able to maintain at 3 months this improvement. And when we saw the third group who were given body weight support treadmill training, again you can see all 4 parameters, significant improvement both post-training as well as 3 months follow-up. They were able to retain the improvement in all 3 groups after 1 month of intensive training. When we compared the groups at the end of training, all 3 groups, group 1, 2, 3, we couldn't find much difference. Even at follow-up, there's not much difference. So what we concluded that chronic stroke survivors who were trained to walk with task-specific approach or treadmill training or with body weight support improved gait parameters. The training and the follow-up. So training with the body weight support offers some additional advantage over conventional therapy approaches, but not significant. This is our paper published. And now the Cochrane review says something similarly, that people after stroke who receive treadmill training with or without body weight support are not likely to improve the ability to walk independently as compared to those walking without treadmill training. But it can improve walking speed and walking endurance. So people who are able to walk will walk better with this system. Those who are not able to walk might not walk better. But remember, these are very controlled studies in mild to moderate stroke patients. In real life, we have treating moderate to severe stroke patients. For those patients, when nothing can make them walk, this machine system definitely has a role. Because these trials only on mild to moderate strokes. They never take severe stroke patient these trials. So remember, moderate to severe strokes, this is a good system because no other thing can make them walk, give them steps. So it's a good system for moderate to severe stroke, not for mild to moderate strokes. Second is, I think you've got a balance system. There are multiple types of balance system available. The whole concept is called as force platform with visual feedback training. So the concept is you're standing on a platform which gives you multiple perturbations, and you can see your COG and skin in front of you. You had a harness also to make a person stand. Multiple systems are available. The advantage of system is that for this system, what you're saying, you can assess balance. There are 3 components of balance: visual, vestibular, and somatosensory. You can find out which balance which component person is lacking. That's one. You can assess balance and you can train accordingly to compensate for the specific system. Suppose with a stroke, I don't have enough somatosensory input, but I can be trained to walk better by compensating with visual and vestibular stimuli. It's a very good system, very good thing to have in your unit, because many patients who are able to walk but can't walk better is mainly because of lack of balance and spasticity. So if you improve their balance, they can actually walk better in the community. Again, one of our studies from Niemann's days to measure the role of balance training, the same concept in chronic stroke survivors. These patients were superintended stroke patients, more than 3 months follow-up, 3 months post-stroke duration, who were able to walk, FAC 224, who were able to walk with or without support. They were trained 20 sessions, 20 minutes per day, 5 days a week for 4 weeks. And what we saw, in this system, you can measure 2 things. One is called as the dynamic joint stability, which is called as the postural stability on stands. Second, we can say the swing concept. So a person will make to stand and the system sways, you are able to control your COG. That gives you an index. Second, you are making a person stand and you are swaying and asking him to do a task on the screen in front of you. That's your limit of stability. So the two components, you get a stance component, you get a sway or a swing component. So again, we have about 185 subjects. We did the criteria of about 40 subjects to ultimately come in. These are the age match parameters of this group. It's an open label study. What we saw, this is the initial, this is post training and 3 months follow. The work balance scale improved significantly, maintained at 3 months. The balance index, lower the better. So from that about 3.8, they come to about 2, significant change, able to maintain that follow up. Limits of stability, higher the better, significant change post training, able to maintain about half of that. Walking speed also improved, bath rate is also improved. Simple training on balance along with conventional therapy improved the balance parameters on the ground, on the machine, improved walking speed, as well as overall functional abilities. So forced platform visual feedback training has a definite role in rehab and should be combined in the acute stage with bodyweight support system to get the stepping back, and then chronic stage with normal therapy to make a person walk in the community more independent in long term. Now we come to robotics. So something beyond a bodyweight support system, because you can't give steps on this system. And the therapist to put the foot forward when there's no power. But in robotics, it can give you automatic steps. There are 5 different concepts of role in robotics. There are ankle-based systems, stationary systems, overground systems, may use in spinal cord injury, foot plate-based systems, geo systems, or the exoskeleton-based systems. This is the most popular one. Here, it's a body weight support system, same what you have, but a robot which can give you steps on a treadmill with a visual feedback. So any person, cervical C5 or a stroke GCS 8 with dense hemi, a TBI with tracheostomy, GCS 10, anybody can walk who can stand on a tilt table for 30 minutes with hemodynamic parameters. So this is how it works. So it's a bodyweight support system with a robot walking on a treadmill. Difference between an unweighing system and the robotics is the robotics will give you step with the help of this exoskeleton system. Versus an unweighing system, therapist has to put the foot forward and there is no power. So in this system, in one session, half an hour, a person can take 1,500 steps. About a kilometer he can walk. So in about a month, you can see how many steps they can take. That will trigger plasticity in the brain, get neural motor recovery. So these are not passive systems. You initially reduce the body weight, you reduce the body weight support, you reduce the robotic assistance, you increase the speed and gradually people will walk in the community. Remember, all these systems work in conjunction with conventional therapy because you get more plasticity, more motor recovery by these systems, but you learn to walk on the ground in therapy only. So robotics can never replace therapist and vice versa. Both things work in conjunction to improve patient outcome. And Cochrane review says that every fifth dependency in stroke could be avoided. 1 in 5 in stroke can walk. It's a very big thing. If you see IV TPA, 5% people come in time in first 5 hours. Here we can start in first few weeks. 1 in 5 stroke patients who couldn't have walked by any other means can be made to walk. And especially non-ambulatory stroke patients can benefit maximum with this type of training. So for upper limb, there are multiple systems available for robotics in the upper limb. There are exoskeleton-based systems where the whole arm moves, and end effector-based systems mainly for the distal part. You have only for wrist and hand. You have only for shoulder. You have sensor-based systems available now. This is the Armio system. So it's exoskeleton-based system, the visual feedback. Again, same concept. God has made hand to do a task, not to exercise. So a person is trying to reach a target on the computer, which is evident like driving a cup of tea. Whatever you can do, you do. What you can't do, robot will sense and complete the task. So it is not passive, it is active assistive training to generate new circuits and plasticity in the brain, getting better motor recovery. This is mainly used for for the proximal weakness. There are multiple available now. And what the Cochrane review says is that it improves arm function in ADL scores as compared to conventional therapy. So it is good effect size. Then people who are able to walk and want to walk better, to analyze their gait. This is called as 3D instrumental gait analysis. I think we did a course in JIPMER about 5-6 years back, where you put LEDs sensors on the patient body. These are infrared optical cameras. They have 4 bit we are here. Person being made to walk. Multiple trials will do. We analyze 4 components of gait: the kinematics, the kinetics, the EMG, and temporal parameters. For example, this guy had a stroke and he came with first follow-up walking with a stick. If you see, he can't bend his knee. He can't bend his knee. His ankle is not touching. There's no proper initial contact on the heel. The knee is not bending. So it is increased coupling of the spastic equinus gait with spasticity of ankle plantar flexors and the spasticity of rectus femoris. So we gave him botulinum toxin injection for rectus and gastrocnemius, and you can see it's bending nicely, and you can see his knee is bending nearly as normal as possible. The ankle is as neutral as possible. So this gait analysis system can help us to target our intervention. We can know what's wrong with person's walking. So we can target our intervention better. You can give plantar botulinum toxin, you plan a surgery in CP children, you can test your orthotics, test your prosthetics. There's multiple implications now in rehab. Same with those who can don't guys who want to work further better. They have distal weakness. All stroke patients mostly have a ankle DI weakness. This is called as FES system, an Ottstock foot drop stimulator. So what it does, the sensor in the heel, there's a small device which stimulates the peroneal nerve here. So as you're doing to do a heel strike, this will sense, give a stimulus, give you ankle dorsiflexion. This is can be used in therapy or can be used in everyday life. People can buy it, wear it inside your shoe. So it improves step length, improves stride length, also improves DF muscle strength and more normality of movement as per Cochrane review. It's a good thing to have in long-term care in these stroke survivors. EMG biofeedback, we don't use it much, but it's a very good system to target specific muscles. Mostly, in upper limb stroke, we don't have enough wrist and finger extensors, don't have enough ankle dorsiflexors, enough hamstring muscles. So if you give them a visual feedback to the patient with the help of an EMG, how much contraction you are generating with your effort, a visual feedback definitely helps to augment motor recovery. So if you use this type of treatment along with normal therapy, you have better motor power, better gait quality as compared to conventional therapy systems alone. These are all Cochrane reviews based trials. Then AFOs, we all know AFOs. These are polio days AFOs, with the conventional stirrups and conventional polio type AFO. Then we came these leaf spring AFOs. Then we have articulated AFOs. Now we have carbon-based AFOs. This is very lightweight, cost expensive, but very good system to walk in the community. And Cochrane review says that if people have weakness in ankle DF and have some weakness, AFOs improve walking speed, improve step and stride length, and better balance when a person is walking. So it has some role to play in long-term care of these stroke survivors. Virtual reality, very commonly used these days. People have Xbox in their house, they have Nintendo in their house. Just let them play. It's very cost-effective way at home-based therapy. They can play a tennis if they have upper limb weakness. They play a football when they have lower limb weakness. With virtual reality at home, it has significantly improved arm function in these stroke patients. Not grip and hand, but proximal arm function, better ADL training, ADL outcome with these patients on home-based training in virtual reality. Very good thing to have at home if you have a stroke. Circuit training, very common concept, especially in Europe, where they have community pools and community gyms. So all stroke survivors go at least thrice a week to the community pool for hydrotherapy or community gyms for a overall circuit training. They will do strengthening of all the muscle groups. They'll do for spine, for hip, for hamstrings, for calves. And if you see, If you do it regularly, on those patients, your long-term stroke survivors could walk 10 meter distance. If they go for this type of training thrice a week, improves gait speed, step, length of stay, retraction. It's a very safe way in community to improve gait in these patients. Even it reduces the inpatient length of stay in those inpatient rehab also. So it works both in the acute stage and the long-term stage. Very cost-effective way to provide intensive strength training, which you normally miss in these stroke survivors. Then came very important concept of CIMT, also called as constraint induced movement therapy. It is used for upper limb. You constrain the normal limb, ask the person to use the involved upper limb at least 3 hours per day. You can do at home. The initial CIMT was for patients who have some finger extensors 10 degrees. Now there's got modified CIMT concepts. You can even use in patients who have no finger extensors. But remember, they can do it at home. They can do everyday tasks, cutting, eating, drinking, for at least 3 hours per day. An Excite trial has shown that it has shown significant changes in chronic stroke survivors with functional MRI studies to compensate for that. So it's a force use paradigm, very cost effective, kept done at home. If they have some wrist of initiation power, you can't do CIMT at legs because you walk with both the legs. But for upper limb, it is the most specific approach and most researched approach in literature and most cost effective approach. But very difficult to do because person do very frustrating to do it actually. But if you can do it 3 hours per day, good outcomes in long term. Then come mental practice. We all rehearse our talks before we are coming and giving our talk. The same way, if we practice mentally, what I'm supposed to do with my hand, with my leg when going for therapy. If you keep it in mind, keep on practicing even in the mind, for doing a task, it improves upper limb function. Limited evidence, but there is some role of mental practice in improving upper limb function in stroke survivors. Mirror therapy. We have forgotten mirror therapy. It can be used for distal extremity, for lower limb, for upper limb. Can be used for both. Very good for neglect, especially visual patient neglect. Very good improvement. Upper limb CRPS, very good improvement. Why is something called as mirror neurons in our brain? So you are taking a mirror box, keeping the inward extremity inside, normal extremity outside. When you're moving it, you think you're normal. When you're moving a normal limb, you think your weaker limb is also moving normal. It triggers mirror neurons in the brain. Very good motor function, ADL improvement, especially in upper limb. Very good cost-effective adjunct to conventional rehab, can be used at home along with CIMT, especially for upper limb recovery in these patients. Then something called as bilateral arm training. Same we have mirror neurons. People say move both the arms together. CIMT only involves using the weaker arm. This says use both the arms together. There are games available for that. There are machines available for that. Again, they work on similar mirror neurons in the brain to trigger neuroplasticity. Again, mainly used for upper limb rehab, not for lower limb. You already work with both the lower limbs. Again, used for upper limb rehab. Some evidence coming in now, bilateral arm training also. So remember, if we use these intense training protocols, you can see the supplementary motor area lighting up in the brain week by week, lead to better excitability and better walking pattern in long term. We also published long back, we took chronic stroke survivors, uh, those who were more than 6 months post-stroke up to 10 years post-stroke. Again, the Niemann type paper, where they were trained for 5 days a week for 4 weeks. These were chronic stroke patients. Half of them were non-ambulatory. Half were able to walk with one-person assistance. If you reduce their spasticity a little bit medication with botulinum toxin, give them a splint, and train them for a month in intensive training protocol, 3 hours per day, what you can see, they're able to walk better. And even at 3 months, they're able to maintain their mobility. We give them a home program. Why? Because in strokes, especially MCA strokes, people have power in the lower limb. They have hip flexors, they have quadriceps, they have hip extensors. they don't get rehab basically. So they are treated at the center, they are sent home and do home-based therapy. They never get a proper 6 weeks of rehab. So even patients in chronic stroke survivors who are not gotten rehab, even 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, if you reduce their spasticity, give them training, give them orthosis, 1/3 can still learn to walk. And those who are able to walk with 1 or 2% support can walk with a stick. This is functional recovery. You will not change their impairment parameters. Their motor power will not change. Their spasticity will come down. They get a sensory feedback, and they learn to get steps on the machine. They're able to walk in the community. So don't lose hope. Walking is still an achievable goal in long term in stroke survivors. So remember, we all know this. We can reperfuse the brain in first 4 hours. We all know that. We can do a IVTP or clot retrieval. The swelling starts coming down in first few days, in first few weeks. Brain tries to change itself. That dies by 3 months. That's why we say 3 months is the cutoff time for recovery in stroke patients. This is not true. If you start intensive training paradigms in first few weeks, you get something new, which is called as training induced reorganization, which you are not aware of us till the last decade. So if you start intensive training protocols here, you can get new recovery which you never thought was possible. Just see few cases. This lady has a postpartum ischemic cardiomyopathy, bad MCS stroke, EF was 15%. She was told, don't go anywhere, just lie in bed. You will die otherwise. She came to us about 6 weeks, spent in the hospital 3 months with us. This is a functional MRI study at about 6 months. If you see, with intensive training, we were able to stimulate supplementary motor areas to recover function. Hand is still weaker, but she's independent, takes care of her child, underwent a heart transplant after 2 years. She's so good now, so fit now. Another guy, bad Apla syndrome, nothing in the left brain actually available. Came at about 6 weeks, spent many months in the hospital and the outpatient. He now drives his own car. He works, he's architect, works independently. Still nothing here. Luckily, he was left hand dominant. So his cognition and speech language was spared and he got his mobility back. Another guy, bad ICS stenosis, nothing in the left brain again. Global ICA infarct. He came at 4 weeks on a ventilator. He said discharged at 3.5 months. Now at about 5 years now, he actually joined his college back with his graduation. Still has some anomic aphasia, still has some hand weakness, but he's living alone. Another guy, bad left involvement here. You see here, the FDG PET scan of a brain. There is nothing, no activation in the left brain. Still, this is at discharge. Now at 4 5 years, he still has aphasia, but he walks independently with the help of just someone holding his back. And still, if you see a FDG PET scan, not really improved. So opposite brain also helps somehow to improve the outcomes. So we can summarize by saying that the rehab, what we learned 20 years back, was just compensatory management. You can't walk, give a stick, can't see, teach braille, whatever. We never target the impairment, and that led to further learn non-use. So whatever ability they have, they were not even asked to use that. So the current rehab is to target the impairment. You work on motor power, you work on language, you work on speech, you work on cognition, work on behavior, work on bladder. All components can be improved if you have a impairment based approach. And these new technologies, what you're acquiring, have a good adjunct to conventional rehab to improve the outcome of your stroke patients. So we can say that advances in recovery and plasticity have shown that task-specific activity results in changes in the nervous system that have better motor behavior. So you are doing a training, you're seeing an fMRI, seeing the outcome. So these systems have a role to play, but remember, they will only help if it is used in conjunction with conventional therapy. They can't replace therapists can't replace machines. Both go hand in hand for better outcome. Thank you very much.
Talk. I thoroughly enjoyed your talk. It touched upon all the aspects, the how exactly we service level itself. You can't hear?
Now it's better.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Now it's better. Now it's better.
All right. Okay. We thoroughly enjoyed your talk. From your vast experience and the depth of learning into the process of neuro rehabilitation throughout your PhD and subsequent continued clinical practice and practice in the laboratory and the therapy stations are very well brightly coming out in the talk. So this was very illuminating. I just also read recently that in one of the Cochrane reviews, an additional point which they have emphasized, I think 19 out of 17 you showed the last Cochrane review. I think 19, another one has come, where more or less the same structure, but they added a sentence stating that the all the protocol parameters have to be researched, and there seems to be from various smaller studies definite trend towards the ability to towards our ability to improve the outcomes by further fine tuning and refining the protocols. So continued attempts, continued clinical trial studies are needed with the newer paradigms, newer protocols, and this is an area which is they're emphasizing in the latest Cochrane review. The 2019 Cochrane review adds on to the
Yes. Yeah.
stating that from the smaller trials which are continuing to accumulate, there is a clear need for further larger trials with to exploring newer paradigms, newer protocols with changed parameters, which we have to build on based upon the existing evidence. And this is something which all of us who use these equipment should be continuing to strive to do. So,
Yeah, you are right. Because see, all these studies which were taken part in the Cochrane review were done on mild to moderate strokes. So you don't need machines for mild to moderate stroke. You need machine for moderate to severe stroke. That's one. Second, all these studies were of very short duration. And third, most of them were done in chronic strokes. So very few studies have taken appropriate patients whom these machines are designed for actually. So if you take proper subacute patients who have moderate to severe strokes, you can't make them walk by any other means. So for those subset of patients, this is a very good thing to have it ambulatory. And same way, those who are able to walk and want to walk better, you can't change their motor power beyond the point. You can only change their balance. Their balance is better, they can walk better. So we have invested very nicely into very cost-effective systems which will help you in long term the outcome of your patient.
this is the time for anybody in the audience to ask any questions. We have a question from Dr. Rajeshri, who is Assistant Professor of Department of Neurology.
My question is regarding patients who have chronic stroke survivors,
Yeah.
who have residual disability, like the video of the patient you showed, whom you did gait analysis and subsequently used botulinum toxin and other approaches.
Yeah.
So, can you just give us a summary of how you would approach such a patient? Say 6 months after stroke.
Yeah.
This is the kind of patient we routinely see in our OPD.
Yeah.
So, what can we do for them?
They got it. So most common patterns, there are basically 4 types of gait patterns after stroke. And the most common pattern is a spastic equinus stiff knee gait pattern. The most commonly you will see, you will do an initial contact in the forefoot, or you will bend the knee, and you will require a stick. Typical, you will see this type of stroke patient in the outpatient. So remember, they will have power in hip flexors and knee extensors. They will have power in hip extensors. They will have weaker hamstrings, a weaker ankle DA. That's one. They will have a spastic ankle transflexor and spastic rectus. Do 3 tests for them, clinical test. One is called a silver scale test. Should look for which muscle is stiff, gastrocnemius, soleus, or both. One. Second, do a prone rectus test. Make the person lie prone on their stomach. Look at the ASIS to test the level. Bend the knee. If the hip goes up, it means rectus femoris is tight. Look for these 2 specific tests and then decide how bad is this spasticity. If rectus spasticity is more than 2, they will require botulinum toxin. If power is more than 3 feet. If not, if it is less, spasticity is less than 1 to 1 plus, give a small dose of baclofen. 1. Second, give them an AFO. Third, start specific infection stop therapy. We have to stretch the gastrocnemius and rectus, teach family how to do it. You facilitate ankle dorsiflexors and hamstring. And third, strengthen the proximal muscle of hip flexors, glutei. So all 3 are required. What is weak need to be assisted. What is stiff need to be stretched. What is anti-gravity need to be strengthened. And add a low dose of baclofen. If it is less than 2, if it is more, botulinum toxin or a phenol block you're comfortable with, give them a proper AF. To do all these 3 things, you can remove stick in many of the patients. And now if you have a balance system with you, train them for proper balance. The most common issue, they don't spend enough time on the stencil when they're walking. So the balance still impaired. So do these 3 things, give them balance training, you can remove stick in many of the patients.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask that what are the non-stroke indications for this system? Are they helpful in neuromuscular disorders or and cerebral disorders also?
What are the long-term?
Non-stroke,
Non-stroke indications. Okay.
especially cerebral neuromuscular disorders.
Yeah.
Are they
Yeah. So if you see there, 3 types of disorders: cerebral, extrapyramidal, and reflexive disorders. Broadly, it is seen. So there are a lot of papers on improving gait and balance in Parkinson's disease, in cerebral ataxia. There are RCTs available. If you treat a Parkinson's in a PSP patient on this treatment training and body weight support, you can maintain mobility for longer period of time. Second, those with cerebral ataxia, the support required to walk is much less those who are trained in body weight support. So it has good role to play in Parkinson's, PSP group of patients, good role to play in ataxia. In incomplete spinal cord injuries, very good role to play because they have the ability to improve their power. They can get their recovery faster and often earlier. And then TBI, same like stroke. Your TBI patients, the same like stroke, one-sided involvement. You start the walking training very, very early in pain education. Good work in Parkinson's disorders, good work in TBI, SCI, good role in attack, other than stroke.
and neuromuscular disorders, sir?
If you have an element weakness primarily, if you strain the muscle more, it's not good. So in muscular dystrophy, in ALS, in the initial stage, it can be used because it also gives you endurance training. When you are walking, you are getting 4 things. You're getting a walking training, also getting a cardiac endurance training. That's a good way to improve endurance. A lot of work now on these systems, especially in Switzerland. Every day have centers for these machines. So geriatric population who can't walk that much in community, they come thrice a week, walk for a kilometer kilometers in half an hour. So it helps to improve endurance in long-term patients with ALS, muscular dystrophies, or geriatric population.
Sir, there was a recent study in which I read said that very intensive delay rehabilitation is actually detrimental to the patient.
Yeah, it's an AVERT trial.
Yes,
It's an AVERT trial. So AVERT trial, what it does, it had two groups. On day one, what we were doing post-stroke. So it was very early mobilization. So there are two groups. In group one, patients were made not to sit. In group two, they were made to sit and do some exercise. That's all. So there was more mortality in the very early mobilization group in our trial, which is only for first 24 to 48 hours. That's all. Again, our trial is now being done on our two study, where they do a much more wider scale. The results say it is not that different. But remember, the person is not fit on day one. You don't do too much on day one. That's all. It is not for intensive training in long term. Only for first 24 hours that trial is talking about.
Professor Gopalakrishnan from Neurosurgeon Questions.
Yeah, I was asking. Hi, Abhishek.
Hi,
For such a long time.
yeah, good to see you. Good to see
You
you.
know, very easy to understand what. Sometimes we forget what so much is there to be done after an event. So my question is, how quick can a patient enter into a rehab program? Is there a time limit beyond which he will not benefit? That the rewiring has occurred and then there is nothing much you can do, or is it like that at any point in time you can come back to a program if he did not have? Yeah.
It depends which impairment you're looking for. Looking for motor impairment only right now, for example. Motor power will not change beyond 6 to 8. So whichever muscles start firing, talking only about strokes right now, muscles start firing in first 6 months, can improve in next 6 months. The muscles they don't fire in first 6 months will never going to fire. That's number one. Second is functional training, which means people have some power, but because of spasticity and lack of balance, they can't use that power. So what, like we published a paper in chronic stroke patients, more than 2 years, 3 years also, who were not trained, can be trained to walk. Someone who's on regular rehab for 6 months, not improving, will not change much. So the muscle which fires to 6 months can fire afterwards also, can increase the power of that. But suppose the next exercise is 0 at 6 months, will remain 0 for life. So we should target specifically what we are looking for. Versus for cognition, for speech, for language, there's no time limits. They start recovering later, the graph goes, so motor will come like this and dies down, but cognition, speech, language still goes up. Even the impairment improves up to years.
The question is, stroke is a problem of the 65 plus, possibly, in our country, it's going to be that way. How much will these rehabilitation methods work for them?
So age is not a criteria. Age is a criteria for neuroplasticity primarily. There's some, if you are diagnosed with an older child, you have less plasticity in older age. But the only way to improve outcome, be it 20 years or 65 years of age, is therapy. There's no medication getting the movement back. So the only available resource to improve outcome in these patients is therapy. You can augment therapy with help of machine. So the only way to improve outcome is therapy. You have to do therapy. And remember, in typical MCS stroke, 1/3 are severe strokes, which will never going to walk. 1/3 are very mild strokes, which will walk. The other 1/3, which are moderate to severe, need intensive rehab. They will not walk without intensive training. So for them, age doesn't matter. The only way to improve outcome is therapy. And these machines will help you to give those number of steps in non-ambulatory patients, those who are not walking, and the balance system will help to improve the walking patients who are able to walk but need walking. So both work at a different time in the life of a stroke patient.
Yeah, I understand. See, when you have a young boy, a young girl, a young lady, whatever it be,
Yeah.
they have that constant mental determination and mind power to get back to normalcy. Whereas in the elderly, we find generally they give in to it and decide, oh, motivation is not that. Mind power is no more there to get back to normalcy.
Yes.
What is your take on that?
Yeah. So motivation is the first thing which is required. Without, if you don't have motivation to improve, you don't want to improve. That's the first thing. And second, 1/3 of stroke survivors in acute, subacute, and chronic stage have depression. There are two things. One is inherent motivation. It is called as resilience now in these days in the medical literature. If you have resilience and if you have motivation, you will improve. If you don't have motivation, you don't want to walk, nothing is going to make you walk. And second important component is if we identify and treat depression in these patients, the outcome is much better. So both things are required: motivation to learn a skill, and second, keep it of depression. If you do both, you can learn to walk. If you don't want to learn to walk, nothing going to help you.
Thank you. Very nice. What you are doing. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi,
Good
Naveen.
morning.
Hi, Naveen. Hi.
So that was a very nice presentation. Thank you. I have two questions to you. One thing is, have you had recently COVID time any patient with having COVID with stroke? And second question is, does COVID increase the chances of having stroke?
Yeah, both things are there. So COVID will lead to more strokes. That's one. In a Bombay study published today only, the average incidence was 1 to 1.5%. Now it is 5% in COVID times. So COVID significantly improves stroke, increased number of strokes. That's true. And second, the COVID strokes behave similarly as non-COVID strokes. We have managed about at least 30 strokes in the last 5 months who had COVID positivity.
Does it affect rehabilitation?
So it depends how long they were in the ICU. So those who were ventilator dependent took longer time to recover after the stroke. But those who are done require ventilation behave similarly as non-COVID strokes. So if you have bad COVID along with a stroke, you are venting for a long period of time, you will have longer time to recover. But if you have milder COVID, you don't need to be in the ICU for long. They behave similarly as non-COVID strokes.
Thank you.
Dr. Abhishek, I know that you are very busy. You marvelously combine both practice. DK, anything else? Shall I wind up? We all enjoyed this talk, and I think I made a correct choice of combining your talk with today's inauguration of our two equipments, both this treadmill as well as the balance trainer. So as we start working on this very actively, we would continue to be under your guidance. We'll be seeking your help, and at some point when when the reopening becomes more intensive and we are able to move around, some point we would like you also to visit the department and see the facilities and go through our protocols, and we can think together how we can modify the existing protocols and try to design some good studies to develop good, effective, and more effective protocols. So we will be under your guidance, and this was a very exciting session. We enjoyed it, and we also benefited from the rich practical experience you are having from seeing a lot of patients. And at some point, I would also like to, I've been postponing this. Last time we just missed out. There was an arrangement to visit the center, but then we got too busy with something else, some other business meeting and all. So next visit, please kindly help arrange for us to visit your center as well, to see all the good work that's going on. So I thank you very much for once again and we'll let you go back to your very active schedule of the day.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Narayan, for the kind invitation. Always good to meet with old friends. Thank you. Thank you very much.